Good morning, Morai Rabotai. We're continuing on Masechet Rosh Hashanah, and today we're going to discuss some of the basic halachot regarding the last daf and half, two dapim that we've had, the Isur of Baltacher, and today's Amud is being learned as is Chut Refuah Shlema for Tova Bat Zipporah, also anonymously sponsored for Refuah Shlema of Daniel, Moshe ben Farangis Avraham, and Rachel Simcha Bat Nahid. Today's Amud also is learned Le'ilu Nishmat Betzalel ben Rafael Esther, dedicated by Mabubi family, and the Le'ilu Nishmat Esther Bat Naftali Tzvi Halevi by Mark Abraham of our own Sabura, which is your side is today, should be an aliyah for his neshama, Bezat Hashem. Amen. This month's learnings of the community has been graciously dedicated by Mahabubi family and Shei family. It should be an ultimate zchut for all their mishpachot. Amen. Okay, so we started a Gemara, a Daf Dalet, really, that mentioned there are 16 items that if you obligate yourself or you become obligated, then they are time bound, which means they have a window of opportunity. If you don't fulfill your obligation within that window, then you are in trouble because you're in transgression of the Isur of Baltach, right? So that's the Gemara in Daf Dalet, and included in that is the mitzvah tzedakah. Tanu Rabbanan, hayavei adamin, arachin, haramin, hekdeshot, chataot, ashamot, olot, shlamim, tzedakot, umasrot, bechor, umaser, upesach, lechet, shircha, upeah. So tzedakah is part of this, right? Now we went through the sources of where we see that this is an obligation. Tzedakah is part of it, but at the end of the day, tzedakah is like the korban, and you have 5 different shittas, generally speaking, following, and this is Machlokes Rishonim, really how we asking, but generally speaking, we follow the Tarakama. Now you have 3 regalim in order to fulfill your tiyuv. Now the Gemara says, I'm a Rava, that by tzedakah is not like that. Tzedakah is different than a regular korban of neder, nedava, and all the rest, because tzedakah you're going to be over immediately. Immediately after you pledge for tzedakah, you have to pay it. Now this obviously creates a great question. First of all, we said in Daf Dalit that's machloket by tzedakah, right? This brighter that I just read is in Daf Dalet Amud Aleph going to Amud Bet. The Gemara seems pretty clear that it's machloket and it includes tzedakah as well. Now, in the Braita that was brought later, tzedakah is not mentioned, and that gave room to Rava to say, well, this is only by korbanot, and all the other things have to be to the Beit HaMikdash. But by tzedakah, it's going to be immediate. So it's kind of like a stira between the two sugyas in Daf versus Daf Vav. And then if we follow Rava that it is immediate, so then how immediate is immediate? Is it mamash right away? If somebody comes and asks me, do I have to run after aniyim to find aniyim to give it to them? Do I have to wait for them? If there's a gabay tzedakah, does it make a difference? Does it not make a difference? How do we wrap our head around this as far as the donations to tzedakah that is nowadays? And it's not just donation of money, like the Hafetz Chaim used to say. It could even be by inviting somebody to your house that is considered in the category of a poor, needy individual. Do I have to skip Shalom Aleichem because it's every second I'm going to be over on Bal Ta'achar? Or can I just be like a normal person going through Shalom Aleichem and Shet Chayin and sit and sing a little bit, right, and bring the first, the appetizer? And what is included in this becomes a big question. Now, I want to read to you two Rambams, and then maybe we'll discuss, as time will allow, a number of insights in our sugya, which will clarify these questions a little bit more. So Rambam writes in the beginning of the 8th perek of Matrot Aniyim in Seder Zraim in Halacha Aleph as follows: Hastakai harei bichlal hanedari. A pledge to tzedakah is included in your nedarim. A person makes a neder of any sort. A tzedakah also is considered a neder. Lefichach, therefore, haomer harei alai sela litzedakah. If a person says, "I'm going to give $100 for tzedakah," or harei hasela azu tzedakah, or doesn't make a difference if you say harei alai or harei zu. If you say this money should be for tzedakah, right? Or I'm going to give X amount of dollars for tzedakah, says the Rambam, chayav litenah la'aniyim miyad. You have to give it to aniyim immediately. You can't say, well, I said it, but I'm going to wait for my next paycheck. It's going to be a little easier then. I have money right now, but wait for, or you know what? I'm going to wait for before the Chag. People need it more, right? The aniyim are going to need it more. It's going to be better. You can make the cheshbon. You made a tzedakah, you have to give it right away. Ve'im icher, and if he doesn't do it immediately, chayav belot acher l'shalemo. It's going to be over. Is transgressing. Hitidor la'Hashem elokecha lo ta'acher l'shalemo. The mitzvah of the avera of bat acher shehare beyado liten miyad, because he can give it right away. Ve'ha'aniyim mesrimin, and you have aniyim around. So therefore, it's much more sensitive than a korban. A korban, you have to go to Beit HaMikdash. You understand, if the guy is living in Bavel, in Tehran, in Los Angeles, and he has to go bring a korban, so he says, Hare alai ola. Expect him to get up tomorrow and get the first El flight and take an animal on top of the flight and go. It's going to take time. So we wait for him for its time. But if you say a neder to tzedakah, you have anim available over you, so then you are chayav miyad. Im en sham anim. How about if you don't have anim in where you live? So then, says the Rambam, mafrish maniach anim. You put it aside, what you said you're going to give, until you find anim. Ve'im hitnash lo yitin achim ani. Right? So this is an important component and caveat in this halakha, that if you made a condition, right? If you had this stipulation, or in the beginning when you made the neder for tzedakah, I said, I'm not going to give until I find the ani, right? Then enot tzarich lafrish, then you don't have to even separate it. So if you didn't say that, you have to mamash separate it, put it aside, and now you wait for finding an ani. If you didn't, then you have to separate it. You'll give when you find. Because automatically the stipulation was that I'm not obligating myself until I find the ani. So says the Rambam, that if you, in the time that you made the neder, if you made it tonight, again, you made a stipulation, that I'm going to give it when I find the gabbai tzedakah. I don't have the wherewithal to go research to see who's for real, who's a charlatan. I'm going to find the gabbai. I'm going to find the rabbi that does this. I'm going to give it to him. Then says the Rambam, in that case, Rashain he could do it as he had stipulated. So that's Rambam number one. Rambam number two is Rambam in Sefer HaMitzvot. In Lotat Kuf Nun Zayin, In Lot Asekuf Nuzayim, he writes, he's Hiranu, he explains the mitzvah of this pasuk of Kitidor LaHashem Elokecha, Lot Acher Leshalemo. The mitzvah of Bal Tacher, the love of Bal Tacher, Rambam explains, Hu Shehizhiranu Ma'avor al Ma Shechiyavnu al Atzmenu. Hashem has warned us not to transgress what we have accepted to bring upon ourselves as an obligation with our speech. Bedibur. Even though that take an oath, say I'm going to give tzedakah, no shvuah, right? I'm going to bring a korban olah, or this will be korban olah, or this deal that I'm going to do, 20% is going to go to tzedakah, or but you get the point. So says the Rambam, Vezehu hanidarim. These are concepts of nidarim. Kemoshe Yomar Adam, like a person would say, Sheyeh kach, when this and this happens, or kach, or when I do such and such, perot haolam asurin alai. Right? I'm not going to eat fruits anymore. That's a neder, right? So if this happens, I'm going to do this. Oh, perot medinazu, or I'm not going to eat fruit from this country or this city. Or ma'achal yadua, or I'm not going to have a certain food. Kegon shomar yaser alai hayayin. So I'm not going to eat wine, drink wine anymore. Or yaser alai hadagim ozulatze, fish. I'm not going to have fish or anything of that nature. You decided. You said. You explained what you said. Vechenim yomar hanaat ishti asura alai. He could even ban his own wife on him. Now, that becomes a whole question of how that's possible, because you have obligations from the Torah. So how can you do that? That becomes a whole sugya in Nedarim. Any neder you make, you're obligated to keep it. This is the piece we need. And the Torah comes to warn, be'over al davar ahu be'omro, when the Torah says, Lo yachel dvaro kol hayotze mipiv yaseh. You cannot transgress what you committed yourself to. You have to do what you committed, right? That says, the Rambam, if you make a neder of tzedakah or korban, שעובר על בל יחל ועל בל תאחר, כלומר, כשהנדר, I skipped a few lines here, קורבן ולא יקריבו ועבר עליו 3 רגלים. Rambam holds, right away, paskins over here, like Talakama, that when you make a neder for korban or tzedakah, you have 3 regalim, right? You have 3 regalim to bring your korban. Uchayav mishum bal tacher. If you waited 3 regalim and you didn't bring the korban, then you are transgressing bal tacher. Mishum lo yaaseh devarav chulin. Vechen kol mash domeh lekorban. Anything that is similar to korban. Kegon sheyidor lebedek habayit. You donated something to the Beit HaMikdash. Money, your ring, your, whatever it is that you have monetary donations to the Bedek Habayit of the Beit HaMikdash. That is also like a korban. Or listaka, right, Rambam. Or if you donated staka, you pledged staka, or lebet knesset, right? You donated to Bet Knesset, va'adomelo, anything of that nature. Uchsha'avar ve'asa ma she'asar al hasmol la'asoto. Now here, Rambam seems to say, in one breath, that when Shlosha Regalim pass, that's when you are over on Bal Tacher. So it's not just that we have a stira in the sugyas, right? From the Dalit, it seems to be that we have a stira also from Rambam in Halachot of Matzerot Anim, Perek Halacha Aleph, to Rambam himself in Sefer HaMitzvot in Lo Ta'aseh Kuf Nun Zayin. So that's something that needs to be explained. Yes.
That contradict what he said earlier, that if it's tzedakah, you have to give it right away. Now he's saying
That's exactly what we're saying, right? You have a stira, you have a contradiction. Is it 3 regalim or is it right away? What does right away mean?
he said tzedakah la'ani in both places, or he said tzedakah la'ani in one, and then tzedakah, like maybe it's maser or a different.
Oh, very good. So you're saying, Avi is saying an answer already. Avi is saying, well, Rambam doesn't say over here in Sefer HaMitzvot, tzedakah le'aniyim, that word is not there. The language of the Rambam is kegon sheidor bedek habayit. You donate it to the Beit HaMikdash. Only tzedakah says that word. Or lebet HaKnesset, or to Bet Knesset. Now, I assumed when I read this that when he says tzedakah means tzedakah le'aniyim, right? Because if it would be kolel or Bet Knesset, that's the next word, right? It would have been a very geschmack answer. What are you saying? Very, because your answer would be, well, Rambam in Matarat Aniyim is saying that you're going to be over right away because you have Aniyim right there, and this is not a donation to Bedek Habayit type of thing. It's supporting Aniyim, so you have to give it right away. What are you waiting for? Going to Bet HaMikdash, the Ani is here, right? It would be a geschmack answer. But Rambam kind of closes that door by saying tzedakah is separate than Bedek Habayit and then Bet Knesset, right? So it's kind of not gishmak. Uh, we're still a little stuck over here, right? So it says, I'm going to read to you what I put here on my page. I categorized it to 3 different things. I try to clarify this a little bit in the sugya that we have from Daf Dalit to Daf Vav. The 3 different answers, right? So again, the question of the Gemara is that the Braita that counts 16 items in Daf Dalit Amud Aleph Amud Bet includes tzedakah in it. That you're going to be over. Get 5-way machloket Tanaim. If it's going to be 3 chagim, 2 chagim, 3 chagim in order, which would be up to 5 chagim, or 1 chag, like Rabbi Meir said, minimum. But that has to pass, and tzedakah is part of those 16. And Daf Vav, Rava says, tzedakah is completely different. Tzedakah, you don't give it right away you're over, right? So Tosfot really asks this question, right? Tosafot, tzedakot, they differentiate between a matzav that you have aniyim and a matzav that you don't have aniyim. If you have aniyim right away available, so then you have to give it right away. What are you waiting for? If you don't have aniyim right away, then you have 3 regalim, right? You still have to, by 3 regalim, you're obligated to go and get it to the aniyim that are not here, aniyim that wherever they are, right? But then you don't have them available. It becomes like the Torah that understands that you have to go. We give you time until you go to Yerushalayim, and then you're going to be over, right? Either 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. But if you have aniyim available, then it's going to be immediate. So that's how the Tosafot says it, right? I'll read to you the language of Tosafot that we have. Utstakot umasarot chayav alehem toch 3 regalim. V'hada amar Rava lekaman. Again, this is Tosafot in the Talit. Says, well, I'll save you the 2 dapim. You will see in 2 dapim from now, right? That's why we didn't discuss this in Daf Dalit. So once you hit Daf Vav, you're going to see that there's going to be a shita of Rava that you're going to be over immediately, right away. Says the Tosafot, what's the pshat? Is it right away or is it three regalim? And says the Tosafot, Hanimiri de kaima aniyim. When you have anim available, it's going to be immediate. When you don't have, you're not obligated to go run after finding anim right away. If you have it, you give it. If you have a gavat tzedakah, you give it. If not, then you have 3 regalim time to go hand the tzedakah to the proper rightful ani. So that's the Tosafot. The Mordechai in Babatra, this is not in our sugya. We mentioned in the last shiur that the Gemara in Babatra, Daf Tet and Daf Yud, has this in, this sugya in an in-depth way, all the agatas and the beautiful things about tzedakah, and this whole thing of when you say the tzedakah, already the aniyim, if there's a gizbar, if there's a gabbai tzedakah, it's as if you gave it to them. You can back out. When can you back out? When can you not back out? All the sugya is there in Daf Tet and Daf Yud. The Mordechai in Masechet Batra in Ot Taf Tzadi Aleph, he adds to this Tosafot that the kavanah is not that the aniyim are not mamash in front of your eyes. You're coming knocking on the Mishulach is knocking on your door. But it means that if you have them in town, right, in your surrounding, you're obligated right away. It's not like, it says, Shlomo Amelech says, the Atzel says, Shachal baderech, Ari barachovot. I'm not going to go out because it's going to be lions in the streets. Okay, I'm going to go. If you have it in town, you go find it. But again, if you don't have it in your vicinity, then we're not going to be obligating you to go on a witch hunt to find an ani. Okay? When you have a gabbai that's achrai on staka, then the Mordechai writes that the achrayut is on the gabbai. So this is a good idea to have. So if you donate it to the Bet Knesset, it kind of like comes out from the Mordechai that you can rely on them billing you if they have a billing system. If they don't, then you have to kind of be on top of it yourself. If they have an official gabbai, you can kind of like rely on that to remember. Once they send you the email, whatever it is, so then obviously you have the obligations. So that's the first one. The second way of answering this stira, this contradiction, is the Rashba. The Rashba in his Chidushim, Rashba actually has it in Tshuvot as well. Maybe we'll get to that if time allows. But the Rashba in Chidushim, in Dibur Matchil Ustakot, he explains that there's a difference between Isur Aseh and Lav. In other words, you remember how we said that everyone agrees with Rabbi Meir that even though that you're not going to transgress the Bal Ta'achar until the third Chag, right, passes, but the first Chag already you have a mitzvah aseh to do it. If you didn't do it the first Chag, you transgress that mitzvah aseh. So says the Rashba in his Chidushim, when Rava says that by tzedakah you're over right away, he's not talking about the Bal Ta'achar right away. He's talking about the mitzvah aseh. Mitzvah aseh of giving tzedakah is unlike mitzvah aseh of bringing a neder or nedava korban. If you made a korban, so we're not expecting you to get up from Haifa and go to Yerushalayim tomorrow. We wait for you until the first Chag. First, if you didn't do the first Chag, you're over on the aseh. Bal Ta'achar, you have 2 more Chagim to go, right? So says the Rashba, that's the difference between tzedakah. Tzedakah, you don't have to go to Yerushalayim. You can give it right where you are. So the mitzvah aseh of giving tzedakah is immediate. The Bal Ta'achar, you're not going to be over until 3 Chagim. So the Gemara in Daf Dalet, when it says you have 3 Chagim, or 5, or 4, or 2, or 3, or 1, right, depending on those 5 shitas, that is talking about Bal Ta'achar. But Rava in Daf Vav that says you made an eder, you didn't do it right away, you're over, that's talking about the mitzvah aseh. You made an eder, give it right away. You have a positive commandment of doing it and not waiting for it. So that's the second one. Now we could. I also put here. I thought we were going to have more time, but why each one doesn't learn like the other one. But we're going to skip that. The third one is the Rambam. Right now, Rambam. We've been scratching our head. Everyone around the table over here says these don't match the Rambam, right? Yeah, it doesn't. It's a Rambam in Hilchot Matanot Aniyim in Perek Chet Halacha Aleph that we read to you first, right? And also in the Halachot of Masechet Korbanot, also Rambam talks about this. That they say when the Gemara says that the Noder is transgressing Bal Ta'achar, after 3 regalim, that is only when a person is making a neder to the Bet HaMikdash, right? So when you make a neder to Bet HaMikdash, then if you give a tzedakah to Bet HaMikdash, right? You make a bedek habayit type of thing, then we give you 3 regalim because you have to still get up and go to Bet HaMikdash, right? They didn't have Zel back then. You'll Zel the bedek habayit, right? They get up and go there. So we understand that things happen, life happens. Sometimes you can't even go for the chag, and so on. So we give you 3 regalim. We understand it. If just like a person that makes a neder to bring a korban to Bet HaMikdash, you have to bring it within 3 regalim. And tzedakah leBeit HaMikdash also is like that. But if a person is mitchayev to give tzedakah to stam aniyim, right? Has hu over al bal tacher miyad. He's going to be over on bal tacher miyad, right? Now, this problem, again, without getting into too much details, this has a problem. The problem with it is, like, this is basically what Avi very beautifully jumped on right away, that difference that would actually answer the stira. And he, I didn't even bring the Sefer HaMitzvot over here. The problem with it is that the Gemara in Daf Dalet is not mashma like that. Gemara in Daf Dalet has bedek habayit things and the tzedakah. And the Rambam himself in Sefer HaMitzvot codifies that, and it's also not mashma. So we still are ending with a little bit of a difficulty, as I mentioned to Tavi before, with the Rambam. How to put the beginning and the end of the Rambam, and according to Rambam, beginning and the end of the Gemara together, it becomes a little bit of a difficulty. Now, in Chot Tzedakah, Aruch in Siman Resh Nun Zayin, in the beginning, in Seif Gimal, Paskins like this last thing of the Rambam, and the Ran Paskins the same way. It's a beautiful language of the Ran. I wish we had time to read through it. That a person that gives tzedakah, I'll just tell you what the Shkaruch says. That person that pledges its tzedakah and doesn't give, he's going to be immediately over on the love of Bal Tacher, and only by korbanot that you have three chagim, not by tzedakah. Such Shkaruch Paskins. Now the Ramah over there adds the Mordechai that we said before, right? The Mordechai that we brought, he brings it in the Ramah that if a person is mitchayev to give tzedakah, and the Gabai who's in charge of that has not billed him, has not mentioned it to him yet, until the Gabai actually bills you, you don't have that obligation, right? And one last thing in this thing is the Radbas. Rabbi David ben Zimra, one of the last generation of Rishonim, first generation of Achronim, he writes that you are over on the lav only when we are talking about kasvet tzedakah mamash, right? It's the money of the tzedakah that you have put out to give. That's when you're over. But if a person says, "I'm going to donate a month of like shemen lamaor for bet knesset, I'm going to give a lamp, whatever it is, like a separate cheshbon than his chiyuv of tzedakah," then there's no isur of bal tacharin. That's an additional thing to my tzedakah that I don't have the isur. So that's a big kiddush as well. Now I want to just end. I know we're over time, but with one little thing, I have much more to say over here. But one little thing of what we started with before the recording started of the Chafetz Chaim. The Dvar Avraham brings the name of Chafetz Chaim. It's actually in Shara Sion. If you invite an ani, someone that's considered ani, someone doesn't have a place, right? The real achnasat orchim, someone doesn't have suda, especially if he's considered halachically like an ani that doesn't have a proper job and doesn't have savings of a year, whatever it is, that situation, you should not even go through Shalom Aleichem and Eshet Chayil and sing Rara. You mamash, this is a mitzvah, you have it, you're going to be over right away, right? And therefore, it says you have to jump into the Suda, do the thing afterwards, right? As first say Kiddush, Hamotzi, then you can start singing Shalom Aleichem as you're doing the rest of the Suda, but let them eat because that's a mitzvah of tzedakah la'aniyim. you got to be over miyad, right? So Dvar Avram says, well, Chafetz Chaim said it. It makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. He says the olam is not noheg like this. People don't do that. What's the pshat that people don't do that? So it says, I'll be melamed zchut on the minhag of the people. And he says like this: if I would stipulate, I say, I'm going to give tzedakah tomorrow, when am I going to be over? So we learned in the very beginning that the stipulations work, right? You remember that? So if you, well, we just spoke about a different type of tonight, but if I make it tonight, I'm going to give tzedakah in 5 days, right? And you're not over right away because you didn't make the exception, you didn't accept it on yourself until 5 days from now. Because then when you invite an Ali, it's as if saying, we're going to go home, we got to say shalom aleichem, I'm going to say hi, I'm going to hug every one of my kids and give them a bracha, right? And go through Eshet Chai, and I make a big deal out of my wife and all that. And after 2 hours, we'll start the Suda, right? So if you stipulate that from the beginning, obviously you're not expected to do something different. So because the neder of the tzedakah was a stipulation from the very beginning, says the Ram, which is very geschmack, comes out. And I actually found that Chafetz Chaim, this is brought in the Sefer I have in front of me, in Torat Adam LaAdam, in Chelik Gimel, page 75, brings that Chafetz Chaim himself, when he had Ani, when he invited people, he went through Shalom Aleichem and all those things. So even though that he was quick, he didn't wait, but he went through the normal thing just faster, just quicker, without killing time, without staying in the shul and saying Shalom Aleichem to everyone else. No, he did the halachic Shalom Aleichem. Got home, he did the thing. So it must be that he also was somech on this beautiful svara of the Dvar Avraham, and Bezat Hashem will continue this in the days to come.